Imagine surrounding yourself with incredible women who've overcome challenges, they've rebounded after failures and disappointments, and women who are not afraid to shine their brilliance to make a mark in the world. These women support other like-minded women because they know there is plenty of opportunity for everyone, and that together we really can make a difference, grow our businesses while have fun along the way. This is what Women in Leadership Podcast is all about. Welcome. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross. Grab a cuppa of your favourite beverage, pull up a chair, and let's get this conversation started. And welcome to another show. So my guest today says running a business and running a startup is like bungee jumping. It involves stepping off a cliff into the unknown with a thin line of security behind you. And when you think you're at the end of your rope, you realize that the rope just keeps stretching. Joining me on today's show is Allyssa Callow. From full-time mum to founding a tech startup, it's been a wild ride for Allyssa. With a background in chemistry and PE and broad experience across education, nonprofits, and community facilitation, tech was not an orthodox career change. Now, Allyssa and her husband founded the Hub app, which is a digital platform that makes it easy to create content, to share it with a click, and invite others to connect with that content in closed private groups. And Allyssa advocates for humane technology that fosters well-being and empowerment. Now, on today's show, Alyssa's going to share change doesn't happen all at once. It's the incremental lessons that shape us. She's going to talk about having something that you can trust in and seek guidance from beyond yourself, lends gravity to your foundations, more about that, as well as the happy pessimist expects that life will have challenges, life will have monotony, you'll experience times of great sadness, and you won't ever get enough sleep. Accepting this helps you rise above your circumstances. Lots of conversation going to go on today's show. Welcome, Allyssa.
Hi, Anne-Marie. That is a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here with you today.
Oh, I love what you're going to talk about today. Let's just start off with something that you advocate for. Share a little bit more about that. Humane technology that fosters well-being empowerment. Why is that so important to you? And obviously your husband as well.
Yeah, it's definitely been a real journey. I've gone from somebody who, I would have described myself as actually quite tech averse. I remember swearing when smartphones came out, I would never get a smartphone because I had this gut feeling that it was going to change the framework of our society. And it really has. Obviously, I folded and ended up getting a smartphone and am now facilitating a tech startup. But the reason behind why we're actually doing this is because of that gut reaction to smartphones, or my gut reaction that I had to social media, that just felt like there are aspects of technology that can do great harm. And there are obviously aspects of technology that can do great and magnificent good, and our society has been wonderfully extended because of technology, but there's a sense that we also have a responsibility to be able to use tech in the right ways and to be able to promote human well-being in the tech that we create.
Yeah, so important. And I know that you're certainly going to share more as we continue on throughout today's interview. Let's talk about change doesn't happen all at once. It's the incremental lessons that shape us. What insights can you share here?
Yeah, I think for me, it's quite a funny thing. Again, running a startup definitely would not have been something, 10, 20 years ago that I would have projected for my future. I've always been someone who's very sensible and safe and had quite solid plans and ways of doing things and like to play the safe game. And so to reflect back and realize now that, we're living with quite a high level of risk in what we're doing as a family. And knowing that I've been able to come to that point made me reflect and go, how did this actually happen? Because obviously that wasn't an overnight thing. I think for me, realizing that change is often slow and that that's okay. And there's little lessons that we learn throughout our life that form us into who we are. And so that's really, where that sits with me, that quote there.
Yes. Let's talk about something that you shared earlier. And I think that sometimes, there are circumstances that really drive us forward. And you were talking about how you sense that there was a level of discernment, I can use that word, that as you started to see tech being developed and having that level of discernment and understanding, and maybe not even having the words around it, but you just had the sense that, yes, it could be used for good, but it can also be used for harm as well. Do you think that when you think about the startup, that you knew and you wanted to have this impact in that area, in the positive, as you said, humane technology that fosters well-being and empowerment, that even though it was an industry that you never even thought that you would end up, the drive of wanting to make an impact for good, was kind of the change that all gave you the courage and the boldness, if you will, to continue on and moving forward. Share a little bit about that, because that can sometimes, it's the vision and the mission that drives us forward, even though we may have thought, I didn't even dream that I would ever be in this industry. Was that kind of what it was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, someone who has described herself as tech averse, who is not on any social media other than LinkedIn, actually, right now. It is interesting to be in the tech space. And the reason for this, and the reason that we've stepped out, and the reason that we've, had this unorthodox change in career. So both, I'm talking about myself, from mum, PE teacher, chemistry teacher, to running a tech startup. My husband's, previously been a professional musician and composer. And so it is quite unusual that we're in this space. But our experience as community facilitators, so we've been pastors of a church, and at the same time, we were also running a music group for children. And part of the beauty of that group, and this is where there's beauty in technology, is that when we weren't meeting in person, we were able to still develop community by sharing photos and sharing, little highlights from life, being able to organize things well. That's been such a wonderful benefit of these platforms. But there was this aspect of myself that just didn't feel right. The longer that we went on, I just felt very conflicted about sharing photos of the children that were attending our class onto social media platforms. And we had all of the correct permissions. We, made sure that we were allowed to do that. But the question was raised, whilst we might be allowed, should we actually be doing this as an organization? Is this best practice? Are we doing our due diligence here? And that question was a large aspect of where the idea for the hub came from. There were other aspects to do with, efficiency and streamlining processes that we're really passionate about as well. But the big heart behind the hub and where it's come from is this sense of, there's got to be a better way. Can we create something that is a safe space where vulnerable people are protected, and even, your media, your content is also protected?
Yes, I love that. And, often it is something like that that is such an ingrained, got to do something better, that idea. And all right, there's nothing out there, so let's go ahead and create that. Since we talked about incremental lessons that do shape us, I wonder, has there been, on reflection, one or two lessons that you've learned that have been a standout for you that you might like to share today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I could share, but in terms of that incremental change of enabling me to be someone who was willing to step out and do something very different and very new, meeting my husband, was very, very pivotal in that space for me. So I've described myself as quite sensible and systematic. And I met him as a professional musician. He was a professional musician traveling around the world. He'd been touring globally for about 7 or 8 years, and many times had found himself with no money in his pocket, and had to busk to be able to get change to get on a bus. And meeting someone like that and knowing that he was the right person for me has been incredibly freeing for me to be able to progressively let go and be willing to take risks. And Jono's definitely been a huge part of my journey in learning to become someone to live quite freely and lightly. And then the second aspect of that, which is probably even more of a foundation for me, would be my faith. So I'm a Christian, and for me, having this faith in God and having Him as such a firm foundation in my life has enabled me to explore more deeply who I am, and be more willing to, explore new options and adventures, and know that He's always there as a fallback. It definitely has lent such a lightness to life that we know the sun will come up each next day. And that's been, very important for me.
Yeah, so true. And, now that you shared that, I mean, when we look at often the different paths, if you will, and the different, I call them markers and milestones, situations throughout your life and the journey that the Lord has you walk through, there are some times where, and in your case too, it's like a career in the tech industry, something that I didn't want. It's like, Lord, are you serious? I kind of can have that conversation. When you look back through your career though, and I'd love to ask you this, do you see that where the Lord has placed you, the things that you've learned through experience, knowledge, training, all of that, that has really added depth to the situation and the business now? Have you been able to draw from your previous careers and circumstances to add value to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really see that God, He always weaves everything together for His good and for His purpose. And so, absolutely, I see my experiences as a teacher to be hugely shaping in what we're actually doing now. And for me, I'd often been described or described myself as a bit of a jack of all trades. So you can kind of pick up something and be quite good at it. But I never felt like I had a real calling or a passion or a real expertise in a particular area. And it comes to me now that running a startup, you need to be a jack of all trades. When you don't have a huge staff behind you, it's important that you can pick up different things, that you can learn skills and you can carry them forward. And so absolutely, I think that's been really important. But also being someone who trains and teaches and communicates. When you're running a startup, to be able to communicate to key stakeholders, to be able to communicate well to clients, to be able to work with organizations and train them in a product is really important as well. So definitely all of those skills have kind of accumulated to take us to where we are now.
Yeah, and it is so true, isn't it? In business, there's lots of hats to wear, and someone who is able to learn things quickly and adapt, I think in and of itself is such a great skill to have, particularly when we see, the things that are changing. And in the tech space, there is so much change that happens. I think is important to be able to keep abreast of that. So let's then talk about having something that you can trust in and seek guidance from beyond yourself lends gravity to your foundations. What insights can you share here?
Yeah, for Jono and myself, we feel a real sense that this is where we're meant to be right now. We're meant to be running the hub and providing an alternate space for not-for-profits, for churches, for organizations to be able to have a safe space to run their groups, create their content and share that. And there's a real sense of purpose there. And we feel very deeply that God is behind that He has opened doors for us that otherwise might have remained closed, and really guided us through the navigation that we've needed to be able to learn the skills that have been required, to have the people in our corner that we've needed to be able to do this. And knowing that he's with us and behind us in all of this is, definitely gives that gravity and that foundation and brings you back down to earth. So when you're doing the bungee jump, it's good to have that grounding and that anchoring in him.
Yeah. And it's, I guess, having that real trust, because if you think about how long has the business been going for? I don't think we mentioned a time frame. When did you actually start the hub?
So the beginning of it, so the birth of the idea, was about 7 years ago. And we actually had our first iteration, which was called Collaborate.church. And we created it essentially for churches. It was out of our church planting and community facilitation experience that we created the app. Just about when we were ready to launch. So we've got a family, I've got 3 beautiful kids, and it's got to the point where I was ready to kind of re-enter my career and was hoping to jump in and work for Collaborate. And the year that was all about to launch was 2021. So the time was very right for new platforms, and the time was right for me. And interestingly, the back end of that app got sold. So it was almost like the carpet got pulled out from underneath us. And suddenly we didn't have an app. We weren't able to use it due to non-competes. And we were left with empty hands, essentially, after time and money that we'd personally put into it. It was all self-funded at that point. And that was a really confusing time. And we still just had this real certainty, though, that it was going to be revived and there was going to be a purpose. So we never gave up on the idea of that. And it was almost a year later, after waiting and sitting there, during those COVID years, being like, we need to be doing this. We need to be out there now. All these organizations need our product, what we're running now. And but it was another season of waiting. And so it was 2021 that our developers were able to come up with a new solution of how we could actually rebuild in a better way. And we also received our first round of funding. And so it really, the hub was birthed there at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. So we're still pretty young.
Yeah. And no, I love that you share that story, and especially when you think you were full steam ahead and all of a sudden, as you said, the rug was just pulled out from under you because the platform that you had originally built a solution on was sold and you couldn't move ahead. And sometimes you sort of think to yourself and pray, Lord, what's going on here? But he knew that there was better for you. And I would imagine you'd learned a lot through being able to use that initial technology. And even, as you said, the developers that you've been working with created one that's even better. So had you not had that situation, you may have still been using a platform that didn't have the great things that you've been able to incorporate in yours. What would you say to someone then, Allyssa, who has had a plan and they're now in a situation or a season of the foundations have been ripped under them? What did you do during that time of waiting? Because I know for many people who do have that entrepreneurial spirit, waiting and that quiet time can be very difficult. So what insights and things can you share to support them if someone is in that situation now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great question because it is a very common component of the startup journey to really have the roller coaster, the ups and the downs, the quiet times, the waiting, and you need to be prepared for that. So I guess that would be my first piece of advice, that it's normal and it's okay. And the beauty that will come out of it is that you will grow. And that's a little bit where the bungee analogy comes in, that, you set out and you have a rope this long and you jump out and you do it and you're flying down with things rapidly going past you and changing. And you get to the end of that rope and go, oh, I think I'm at the end of my rope. That's been so hard. But then the rope stretches and you go further. And I think that would be the advice, that if you're in for the ride, that you need to be prepared to be stretched and to be challenged and to be patient in the moments where you think everything's falling in a heap. The second aspect for me, again, just relates to my faith, and so it's I guess hard to speak separately to that. But for me, having that foundation to trust and believe in is what also at the end of the day gives me that moment to be able to go, okay, we can go to sleep peacefully tonight. And even though there might be all sorts of things happening around us, knowing that he's actually in control really is incredibly helpful for me.
Yeah, because I know when we spoke, because we've spoken prior and we had a conversation about certain people that you've met. I mean, doors have been opened that you just could not have opened were it not been for the Lord placing you. I mean, there's things that just happen that is just divine placement of people and other situations as well. Hasn't there been through this your journey?
Absolutely. And we've really felt that throughout, and we feel like everything has a purpose. And so even the really difficult times have prepared us. So it was funny the other day. I was at a physio appointment. I broke my ankle 3 months ago, which has not been fun. And he was just asking us, my husband was with me, asking us a little bit about, our startup and how it was going. And his comment was, oh, you guys seem very relaxed. And my reply was, it's a learnt tolerance to stress. And that's been building. So, from meeting Jono as a touring musician to starting a family. And, we've gone through health challenges for many years, which were hugely shaping in being able to let things go and really understand what's important. And then also going through times of, extreme financial hardship. When our second son was born, we had very, very little money, and huge clients that Jono had been working with. As we just found out we were pregnant with our second, had to pull contracts. And we suddenly were left, we'd had, an array of different revenue streams. We suddenly had nothing. And it was a really challenging time. But again, we felt there was purpose in that. And there was beautiful moments throughout it. So on 3 separate occasions, our eldest daughter, Summer, actually found $50 notes. And just in weird places. So, we'd be sitting on the couch looking at our beautiful new son, but going, we can't buy him clothes. And then our daughter went out. We had lived on a 2-acre property at the time. And she went outside, and in the creek by the property, she's like, oh, I found a pineapple. Which is what she got, a $50 note. And that happened 2 other times. So not just loose change on the ground, but $50 notes. And no other time in our lives have we ever come across those. We haven't had that same need. But in those moments, we knew, God's still with us, and there's a purpose in this. And those experiences have enabled us to be able to be in a place where we've got a young family, we've got school fees, we've got all of the, the usual financial pressures, but to be able to feel that sense that we can step out and we have that sort of that tolerance for risk and for stress that has been developed in us as a couple really over our entire relationship.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you're sharing that story about the $50 notes, I just have to share, there must be something in $50 notes with the Lord, because I have a friend, a close friend, who this is many, many years ago, and she went to an event that was happening at her church, and she had a young son, and the collection came round, and she was so moved by the speaker's testimony and the things that he was working towards. She gave the full $50 notes. And it wasn't till afterwards she thought, oh, that was the $50 note, the $50 that I had. We were very stretched for funds as well, that I was going to use to buy food for my family this week. And do you know, she just left to prayer and was playing with her son in the sandpit, pulled out a weed that was next to the sandpit, and there amongst the roots of the weed was a $50 note. And
Amazing.
Thank you,
I love
Lord.
that.
It's just
Yeah, and of course,
and
it's not just us that's experienced it. That's wonderful.
I mean, that's how God works. That's how He works, and yeah, that's right. And I love the way that you've really been able to share with us today that it is so much your faith and really just trusting in Him. And it's in those moments when we just surrender that things happen undescribable. Well, we know what's happening behind all of that. So it's wonderful. Let's talk about the happy pessimist. It seems a bit of a contrary statement, doesn't it? But you said, and you've kind of seen this in what you've already explained, but you say expects that life will have challenges. And, some people might say, Allyssa, well, why do you expect challenges? Because then you're welcoming them. But I mean, as you've said, I mean, some of those challenges, when you look back on now, you've got this wonderful testimony that you can share. Well, when we were really scraping, the Lord the Lord just showed up, and that's what He does. Life will have monotony, you say, and you'll experience times of great sadness, and you won't ever get enough sleep. But accepting this helps you rise above your circumstances. It really does, through what you've shared already. But are there some other insights that you want to leave with people? Because I think we can all agree that we're living in some pretty challenging times, no matter what country you're living in. But I'm sure that some of your insights are going to be very encouraging for people today.
Yeah, well, I truly believe that life's an adventure. And I think if we approach with that mindset, then it really does help. So there's a lot of learning that is going to happen. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of change as humans. We're definitely not static. And so if we can approach each experience that we go through with that mindset of, okay, this is an adventure. What am I learning? How am I growing? It definitely helps. And that doesn't minimize, because as you said, there's incredible hardships that people are facing day to day all over the world. And so that's not to minimize that, but it does help to kind of to rise and have some level of understanding that there will be growth out of these experiences. The happy pessimist, it's a funny one. I definitely would, mostly describe myself as an optimist, but there is something quite freeing in that acceptance that, there's going to be hard things in life, and there's also going to be really boring times. And I think that was often, has often been a challenge, where you're doing your mundane tasks and you're doing more laundry, or, you're wiping the bench again. And these tasks that seem quite mundane, to just go, yeah, this is life. This is all part of it. There's going to be really exciting things, but there's also going to be boring times. There's going to be incredible joy, but also incredible sadness. And I think if we can reduce that level of fear of the what if, or what if this happens, or that we can actually live a little bit more lightly.
So true. And I mean, as believers, I'm a believer, a Christian as well. And so we know that we're told you need to give thanks no matter what situation that you're in. And it instantly changes your outlook to circumstances. And I think if I look back at some of the greatest challenges that had me on my knees, that really just threw me, for a six. That's the saying we have here in Australia to do with cricket. I'm sure the world would understand that. Looking back, it's those greatest challenges that has become the greatest blessing. Because had it not been for those challenges, it would not have shaped the character and the understanding and maturity, if I can use that word, even wisdom. But for me, godly wisdom that I can see through what the Lord says rather than what I assume, or through the lens of how the world sees it. There's just this wisdom, and you can look at things, even the most challenging things, and you know that the Lord's got you, no matter how bad things. He has you. He has a plan for your life, and we know, when we read the Bible, how things will end. And so there is this joy and peace, if that's that we have with us daily, that we're promised. And and it has ups and downs. Startups has ups and downs. And then also juggling a family too. Share a little bit about that. How are you doing that? Because I know in a previous conversation with a guest, that was also challenging for her too, to juggle career and beautiful family. How do you do that? How do you navigate through with that?
I think it's a very personal journey. And so I guess I want to begin with that in no way whatever I share am I endorsing as the right way. And I really believe that every mother, every father has to, navigate that journey for themselves and determine what that looks like for them. For me, it's been really important to just keep that mindset of, family first. Family is first and foremost the most important thing, as much as we might be, excited and, potentially also weighed down by our work and what we're doing. We always come back to family. And so we really have, from early days, tried to set ourselves up to be able to facilitate that. And so we made sacrifices when we had young kids. We had our kids all very close together. And so I essentially did have quite a career break when we began our family. But at that time we chose to, and we were, had the privilege of being able to do that, which obviously not everybody does, but we were able to live in a separate dwelling, but with Jono's parents. And so that just simplified finances for us. And we didn't have that same pressure of, needing to get back into the workforce as soon as possible. So that was one way that we managed it early on. And I essentially just went, I'm not someone who feels like they can do it all. And so I knew for me to be able to actually step back and let go of career for that period of time was actually the best step for me. And then as they've got older, we've just sort of then incrementally opened things up. And so as they got older and was no longer breastfeeding, then, Jono was able to really step in. And so we've done, a lot of, we parent together. So he has always chosen to have a lot of flexibility in the work that he does. Also instability, but flexibility, which has meant that he's been able to be very present in the kids' lives and do a lot of the care as well. And so, we've always really chosen to partner together as parents, but then also in our career. But definitely, you're asking me this question coming off the back of school holidays, Anne-Marie, and that's always, that's a juggle. That's the one time where we really feel like it's a juggle. We love the flexibility that we have. We work remotely. We can be flexible to a large degree with hours, so we can work in evenings. But there are things that just need to be done. And you've got 3 adventurous, boisterous children. They also need attention. It's a juggle. I think that would be the answer there. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, and you know what? I just love the response that you gave, because it really, some of the things that you've shared around business too, there are ups and downs and roundabouts and so forth. And similarly to when you have got a young family, and, often the talk about life and work balance, there's to do this and do this strategy and do that strategy. I mean, we're dealing with little human beings who are learning and growing, and so great. It would be wonderful if they sit at the table and give us half an hour of peace. I mean, I had young ones too, and it is a juggle, and I think they're different seasons. But what I love and what I've heard you share, it is something that you discuss together between you and your husband, and I think sometimes it's having that conversation, and I would imagine that that's how you run your business as well, because we could do a whole other show on how do you run a business together. As are there things that you've set up so that there are certain boundaries and understandings, or both using the gifts and talents that you bring together? But it sounds as that you both come to the table, the boardroom, if you will, and have that discussion so that there's awareness and a bit of a plan forward. Is that right? You do openly share and communicate between, rather than just expect things to happen.
Yeah, communication's hugely important. And we actually have chosen to be quite open with our kids on our journey as well. So that's been something, again, that you need to kind of navigate and juggle a little bit about how much you allow them to know, mindful that they're little and they don't need to carry the burdens that we carry. But when we're going through, difficult times or making plans for the future, we invite them along. So when we're talking about, potential travel opportunities, we talk to them and say, would this be something that you would be interested in as a family? when we're going through difficult times, acknowledging, saying, oh, this is, something that's actually quite hard right now, and we're really working. We pray together as a family. But the kids, we really want them to be part of it. We want them to understand why we've done this startup, this crazy thing that we're doing. And we want them to be a part of it and involved in some of those decisions and have a voice, because it does impact us as a family, what we're doing. And so communication's quite key there. And particularly with Jono and I, we really do approach things as a team. And so it is important that we can be very open with each other, and we can, put boundaries in when we say, okay, if one of us is making dinner and the other comes in after work and goes, oh, so I just did that, I've spoken to this person, and we're able, we've given each other permission to say, hang on, my head's not in that space and I want to keep it out of that space for now. So we definitely, need to continually communicate that and be able to, be open and honest with each other where we're at.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. Now, if people have listened today or even caught the recording, Allyssa, how can they find out more about the Hub app? What's the best way for them to connect and find out more?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We've got a great website up and running. And so I believe the links are there, but if not, I'll pop them through to you, Anne-Marie. I'm on LinkedIn. But absolutely, just reaching out via the website. Love to start conversations with organisations who are considering, is there an alternative? A lot of not-for-profits are starting to raise this question from a governance perspective. Are we, in directing people to social media platforms that we facilitate our organisation on, are we actually doing the best by them? Are we loving our people by directing them here? And so it's been really encouraging working alongside organisations who are starting to raise these questions, but also having an alternative in that marketplace that people can utilise so they can carry out their due diligence.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think also too, and this is something that you've stressed throughout as you're sharing more about the Hub app, is that it's very community focused. And I think that people are recognizing the absolute importance of building community and being on a platform, especially some of the more wider community platforms. I mean, I was just reading some of my colleagues who are just doing the normal course of their business being blocked, being banned, being, you can't share that, but it was something to do with their business. And, a lot of the standard, more common social media platforms and so forth, digital platforms, people are looking for other alternatives, and this is certainly going to be one that I highly recommend they certainly check out, particularly if people are very concerned about leveraging, if you will, technology platforms that do foster the well-being and empowerment for their users and the communities that they are building. So very important. Well, thanks once again for coming on the show. Loved our conversation, and I certainly encourage people to continue the conversation with you and your husband, Jono, to find out more about the Hub app.
Okay, thanks. It's been such a pleasure, Anne-Marie.
You're welcome. See you soon. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Hey, it's Anne-Marie. Before I go, are you a coach or a consultant who feels like the world's best kept secret? Your experience is vast, yet secretly you're frustrated because despite all of your hard work, you're just not getting the visibility, the recognition, or new clients you'd hope for, and you don't know why? I've created a free resource that'll help you build visibility, generate leads, and enroll dream clients with ease, because you're seen as a trusted authority, even in a crowded marketplace. And you've positioned yourself as the choice versus just a choice for your dream client. To get started, go to annemariecross.com/gift. That's annemariecross.com/gift.